This guitar sounds pretty good. Welcome back, legends. I hope you're all really well. It's time for another installment of Friday Q&A. As always, thank you for this week's questions. There are some really good ones in there. I'm looking forward to getting into them. And if you have questions you would like me to answer on next week's Q&A, put them in the comments below. There's all the usual links to support the channel and get some cool free IRs and all those kind of things in the video description. First question is actually about this very guitar. This is a PV Wolfgang Special. It's got natural binding. I've seen a few people say that the specials didn't have natural binding, but if you don't believe me, the headstock says PV Wolfgang Special. Maybe it's a different neck on there. I've got these, it's got the googly eye mod on there, which is really important as well, but it sounds good. I always forget how much I enjoy playing this particular guitar, so that's why I have got it out for this week. The next question is about my Gibson with the tape on the headstock. Why on earth am I doing that? And the person who asked this question, Cool Guitar Gear, they have a really good YouTube channel just demoing cool guitar gear. I just watched their Boss OD20 video and I really enjoyed it. So shout out to that channel right there. The whole tape thing it's just this running joke. You know, the Gibson Play Authentic video, you know, if you want to have a good chuckle to yourself on how not to market your giant guitar corporation, you can go and watch that video. It's still on the internet, but that's why I did that. And every time I play that guitar, somebody asks me about the tape on there, and you know, comments are good for your reach and all that kind of stuff. So if you got nothing to say, you should definitely just leave a comment in this video so it gets lots of reach. That's unfortunately how YouTube works. Nevertheless, I got to say, Shahar, you left a really funny comment in there that I'm not gonna repeat because it says some really offensive and bad words in there, and I don't want to get this video demonetized by saying that one word that all Australians use to refer to their best mates, by the way. Just putting that out there. That's a term of endearment in this country, but you know, in some other places it's not. I get that. That was a really funny comment though, Shahar. Shahar has a question as well, talking about I've obviously got a lot of guitars. How do I keep inventory of everything? And yeah, once you kind of hit a critical mass with guitars or gear or any other thing that you're into collecting, it's pretty important to actually kind of catalog them. So I have a spreadsheet saved on my computer and backed up in the cloud and emailed to myself and printed out with all the serial numbers of my guitars and like a description of them. So it helps me keep track of stuff that I have, and you know, if anything unfortunate happens to them, I've at least got a pretty decent record of what's going on there. So yeah, some of the old Gibbos and things like that, you know, they've had headstock cracks and refinishes, and I can't quite make out the serial number, which is why they don't leave the house. And obviously for some other reasons as well. Some of them are just old guitars and they're not super reliable, but that is why I keep a nice inventory. I would recommend anybody else out there with their instruments at least try to have a running record of the serial numbers of the guitars, and you know, have photos of them and all those kind of things. That's just kind of best practice for your stuff. Alrighty, next question comes from Travis Russell, DC. Do I ever run stereo amps or wet dry setups live to thicken up your sound as a three-piece? I do run stereo when I can. A lot of the reason being I have some stereo rhythmic delays that are quite important to the sound of particular ragdoll songs that we play, but I only ever bother doing that when we're playing through a stereo PA, and you know, some smaller venues just have mono PA, so there's actually kind of no point doing that. So for example, we did a show last Saturday, and even though it was, I guess, kind of like a mid-sized club for Perth, it was still everything mono. So I just changed the output setting on my FM3 to some left and right. It kept things really easy. But in the case I do get to play stereo, it's super awesome. I was watching a Bob Bradshaw interview recently. I think it was on Tone Talk. Again, I'm going to just be shouting out everybody in this episode. Shout out to Mark at Tone Talk. They've been doing some really great episodes recently, but the Bob Bradshaw one is an all-time classic. But something that he says in there that I thought was interesting was the wet, dry, wet thing evolved from a few things. Like when you had master volume, non-master volume plexis that didn't have effects loops, you would load them down with a resistive load, and then you could place your studio style effects after the distortion. But of course, it's a resistive load, so it's changing the character and the tone of the amp. So before, reactive loads were widely available. People figured out that, you know, if you ran your head into the load, but you also ran it into a real cabinet, then it would sound like the actual amp because it's taking the load from the cab. You're getting the correct kind of impedance response. You know, it's a reactive load. So I think that's where that whole, like, well, you need a cabinet. If you're going to be running a cabinet with your head anyway, you may as well have that one. That's your dry cab. And then you use a resistive load on the other speaker tap, and you send that to your stereo effects. You put that through two cabs. So looking at wet, dry, wet as that kind of like evolution of, you know, needing to load down heads that don't have effects loops, and or maybe they're just stupidly loud to get the tone, kind of makes me think that, you know, for me, I'm using an Axe-Fx or an FM3. Stereo is going to be fine because I don't have that problem. I can just dial in my perfect distortion sound. The Fractal stuff models all the impedance curves anyway. Then I can place my stereo delays and reverb after the amp and the cab, studio style. So yeah, long story. And I'm going to do a video about this, like stereo versus wet, dry, wet. I actually think wet, dry, wet is maybe not necessary for those kind of vintage tones these days because we've got reactive loads. Yeah. Anyway, very, very good question. And I agree with you about the Hamer guitars and not wanting to sell them because they are amazing. By the way, that's the new Opera House reverb in the latest Axe-Fx 3 firmware. It sounds pretty killer. I've got some pitch detune happening on that, and it is the Cameron CCV2A model, because I know I'm going to get questions about that. Awkward segue because I missed a question. This one comes from Tim at MT Guitars, my favorite Whitesnake guitar player. And, you know, there were so many guys who have played in that band who are just absolutely ripping. But John Sykes is right at the top for me because the 1987 album, right? That is one of my favorite albums of all time. John's lead playing, just otherworldly, right? You know, that man has so much swagger and soul in his playing, and he's one of my biggest influences. So John's right up there. Bernie Marsden would be up there because I love the kind of bluesy early Whitesnake stuff, and Bernie's playing is fantastic. His songwriting is great as well. The Live in the Heart of the City album is just such a great live album as well. And I would go with Doug Aldrich because when I got into Whitesnake and this style of music, they just put out that live DVD with Doug on guitar. And to me, he was like doing the Sykes thing, but in his own way. You know, he's kind of got the Gary Moore, Paul Gilbert, hyper vibrato and attack going on, and he just looks ridiculously cool. He's like the world's biggest rock star. So that would be my top three. I've seen Whitesnake live with Joel and Reb, and they were both amazing as well. Joel just, I love the way he performs. Like, you know, that's what I want to be able to do, the way he just goes on stage and kills it with so much authority. Reb, obviously, I love his stuff with Winger as well. Amazing player. The stuff with Mel Galley is really good. The kind of Mickey Moody stuff is really good as well. Adrian Vandenberg, pretty cool. I think that Slip of the Tongue is not my favorite Whitesnake album, and to me, Steve Vai still feels like a weird fit in that band, although that Live at Donington DVD is pretty good. That kind of made me go, oh, actually, seeing it live kind of makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, I know a lot of people associate Whitesnake with Steve Vai, but you shouldn't, because all the other guys I just mentioned were probably a bigger part of the Whitesnake sound. It seems like Steve just kind of flew in, did his Steve thing, and then got out of there pretty quickly and went on to become guitar god Steve Vai. Nothing against any of his playing on that album, it's pretty cool, but Whitesnake to me are a real blues-based rock band, even when they were at the height of being a hair metal band. And yeah, there's my whole editorial on why Steve Vai wasn't the best fit, but John Sykes was. I think it's that kind of blues basis in there that you know, just kind of works for that style of music. Feel free to disagree with me though, because I know a lot of people's favorite Whitesnake album is Slip of the Tongue, and don't let my opinion about it taint you enjoying it, because I never want to do that. enjoy what you enjoy and like what you like. If you have any other questions about what I'm using, please let me know in the comments below. This one is a question from Max R. Not sure if I've covered this. I'm not sure if I've covered it either because I have a pretty short-term memory, pretty bad short-term and pretty bad long-term memory as well. Any tips on making a great acoustic simulator with the FM3 or the Axe FX3? That is a very good video idea. Shout out to my buddy Christian over in Denmark. If you're on the Fractal forum, he's Smitterfar on there, and you can check out his YouTube channel. He has a video using acoustic IRs and the multiband compressor where I think he gets a really good acoustic sound out there. There's also, you could use a tone match if you're on the Axe FX3 as well. I'm not sure if it would be a great acoustic simulator. That is a really, really hard thing to get going. That is kind of one of these, it's like really great sounding and feeling electronic drums and really great sounding and feeling acoustic guitar sims. But yeah, basically there's a couple of multi-band compressor tricks you can use to kind of get that body resonance and then an IR from an acoustic guitar. So I think it's possible to get a pretty good sound out of that, and you should go and check out Christian's video. I think if you just search like acoustic guitar simulation Axe FX3, it will be on there. This next one is from It's Me the Seventh Seal. Any chance of doing a collab with Huge Voliverta? Oh, I love that man's channel so much. He's like the older brother I never had. Huge is huge, and I would be so down for that. And if anyone wants to show him this video, just preface it by saying that I love the man and that if he ever wants to do anything together, I'm totally down. That would be pretty cool. And his Marshalls sound so amazing. I think he's like a cross between, if you take Ola's chuggability and you take Johann Segerborn's appreciation of vintage Marshalls, then you just right in the middle. He's an amazing player, pulls great tones, and one of the upsides of the absolute disaster that has been a global pandemic is that people like him are making great YouTube videos. So there's one silver lining at the very least. I love his stuff. Yeah, really, really cool. This is a question from Tim. Is it a question? About the Boss GT1000 core. Yeah, it's pretty interesting that it's basically a full power GT crammed in there. So I've mentioned this before, I kind of want to grab one just for all the effects rather than, I love the sound of the Boss 500 series pedals especially, but for things like the Terra Echo and the vintage delays and some of the reverbs and especially some of the cool modulation like the overtone, feels like it would be worth getting that just because it's a nice small form factor. MIDI it up and then you've got all your great Boss style effects. Pretty cool. This is a question from Enam Khan, and it says, are legato shredders a rare thing these days? I would say they are more popular than ever. Go and watch, if you haven't already, Rick Graham and Tom Quayle and Andy Wood and the legato stuff those guys do. Martin Miller, go and check out Tim Miller. He's an amazing fusion guitar player who kind of does the Holdsworth thing. There are a bunch of other kind of younger guys who are combining, I guess, the fusion thing with the whole like thump guitar thing as well, doing amazing, amazing legato stuff. Joseph, I'm going to butcher his name. Can't remember. I'm sorry, Joseph. If you're watching this, feel free to thumbs down that. But his band Bird Problems are ridiculous if you like kind of modern prog fusion. Ridiculous legato player. Definitely go and check that guy out. I watch all his videos and I just go green with envy. And I mean, Stephen Taranto, Aussie guy, watch Pliny, the way he uses legato. I think legato is it's kind of never been more popular in my opinion, especially in the whole like prog fusion scene. I should try and play some legato stuff, but I'm not going to embarrass myself after listing those players. Yeah, really, really good question. I think legato is definitely one of the in techniques, and we're probably witnessing the state of the art of legato. And go and watch Tom Quayle's Lazy First Finger Syndrome video. And also all those guys who do the Guitar Hour podcast. That's an awesome podcast. Go and listen to that, especially Jake and David Beebe, because they're ridiculous legato players as well. Oh my God, there's so many people. The more I think about it, the more I realize how inadequate I am. You would love to see the synergy through a solid state power amp. That video's coming up. Thank you for that one, Diganzen. I'm gonna try and do like a power amp shootout with some modules and some preamps using the Syn 5050, probably my Boogie power amp and probably my Matrix power amp, just to get some different flavors, and maybe a head as well. If I do that, I should probably do my Recto power amp and a Marshall power amp as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. All right, we're actually kind of near the end of this. This is one from Dominic over in Canada, and this is this week's listening recommendation from Dominic. Go and check out some Brian Tatler Diamond Head, specifically the Canterbury album. We were talking about this recently, about kind of how unique that particular guitar sound is and how it's just the sound of really, 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 really loud amps captured. So there you go. Precursors of thrash, that particular band. Fantastic band. Alrighty, this one is another one I've been looking forward to answering since I read it a couple of days ago, from Rumi, talking about how Jimmy Page would layer guitars. And the thing I love the most about Led Zeppelin is probably Jimmy Page's production and the way he layers stuff. And, you know, there's so many amazing things about that band. But he's talking about how in the evening he used a Strat for the rhythm parts and a Les Paul for the solo. Have I ever used different guitars on different tracks for ragdoll songs? Yes, almost exclusively the rhythm tones are created by playing, say, a double track with my PRS and a high gain amp, and then I'll either change the amp model and the guitar or just the amp, but then there's always extra layers of kind of stuff. So if you go and have a listen to Rust, there is a section after the first chorus where you hear this really lo-fi version of the guitar riff for a couple of seconds. That was played on a junky Gretsch that was kicking around the studio that we tuned down. Just needed this kind of particular twangy sound. So we used that, and then the rhythm tracks are quad tracked, and then the lead, I use my PRS for the lead, and then right at the end there's like a fuzz track that comes in, probably played on a Strat or a Tele. So that is one of my favorite techniques, is using multiple guitars and multiple amps to create textures. So you go from, oh, that's a Les Paul into a Marshall, to this is this big hybrid sound. It's basically sound design for guitar, which I think is really, really interesting. And it's a great way to do it. I mean, just try, if you're double tracking something next time, try and, you know, use a Strat on the left channel with your amp, and then use a Les Paul or a humbucker guitar or a different position on your Strat on the right hand side, but with the same amp tone. And that's a really great way to get some layers. And last one, any tips on practicing effectively if you have 2 hours a day to play guitar? 2 hours a day to play guitar is heaps. If you organize your time well, you can get a lot out of that. I would probably devote half an hour of that maximum to purely technical stuff. You know, we were talking about legato before. So one legato exercise you might want to practice is the hammer on from nowhere. So you might take something like this. I don't know, something like that, where you're just basically building up, really focusing on one technique for a couple of minutes, like that particular thing, run it with a metronome, and try to like play it twice slow, play it once fast thing. Then I would devote at least half an hour to maybe just learning a song in a particular style that maybe you're not very comfortable with. For example, if you're really into drop tune metal stuff, go and learn just some funky pop song. Like go and learn Get Lucky by Daft Punk. You know, this kind of thing. Go and get some funk chops happening, or play some acoustic guitar, or just do something different, or just learn how to play and sing a song. And if you're the only person who's going to hear yourself play and sing it, so you develop musicianship that way. And then the other hour, you can spend on whatever you want. Have fun for the other hour. So you have like 50% of your time is developing technique, developing musicianship, you know, really trying to up yourself in that particular respect. And the other half, just see how you're feeling and have fun and reconnect with that thing that made you want to play guitar in the first place, which are cool sounds and doing cool things, or, you know, sit down and write a song, or sit down and record something and try to get something tangible as an end result that you can say, okay, cool, I recorded 8 bars of a guitar solo today, or I recorded a riff and I quad tracked it and I used that trick Liam was talking about using different guitars and different amps, and then I bounced it out and then I just kind of spent some time jamming on a melody over it or a solo or something like that. So yeah, that's how I would break down 2 hours of practice if you have it. If, you know, I think a big thing with making progress on the guitar a lot of the time is people either don't have enough time and they just simply can't get to all the things they want to get to, or they have too much time and they spend a bunch of it kind of just doing exactly the same thing and not kind of being a little bit disciplined with how they break up their time. So I have 4 different things I can practice: pure technique, you know, pure ear training or musicianship or whatever I'm working on, songwriting, and then just whatever, you know, have some fun, play loud, scare the neighbors with the kind of Tyrannosaurus Rex roars you can get out of your guitar. And with that, I'm going to play a little bit for you all. I'll play you all out. Thanks so much for watching the video. Got any questions or comments for next week, please put them in the comment section below. Stay safe, be good to one another, and I'll see you all then.